All right, welcome back. We are COMP1116. That is Game Programming 3 in the fall 2025 semester at Georgian, and it's week 6. Wow, I can't believe we made it here so quickly, it feels. And let me just talk about where we're at right now. We're kind of doing our final build for the first-person shooter game that we've been working on all semester so far. Next week, we'll add to it with our mid-semester test. That's what's going to happen. You're going to see that we're going to add some new features to the game. So it's not like something you're not going to ever see before. I'm going to make something brand new for you. The plan is you're going to use the same project we've been working on all semester so far, and then just expand it or extend it. Okay, so we're going to add a couple features that we haven't really done yet. Last week, what we did was I got you guys to do a bit of a test, right, for people who were in class. I tested you in terms of like how long it's going to take you for you to do stuff, and I kind of gave you like 40 pages of blueprints basically to go through, and said, okay, go, let's see how much you can do in an hour. And some people were successful. Some people could do it in about an hour and 10, an hour and a half. Some people took a long time and they didn't get very far at all. Depending on the class, I think the second section did actually a little bit better than you guys overall. But part of it is knowing what to do, right? Like one thing I'm trying to train you to do with this this semester is really understand how Unreal Engine is knit together, right? That's the idea. Okay, great. Thanks, Andrew. So, so again, what it is, you've got a bunch of these, slides that are coming at you, and each one is asking you to do something. And the one thing that, of course, we're doing is trying to figure out which node, how to create those nodes. How do we do that, kind of thing. And so the idea is as you practice, the node creation and knowing how to do things is going to be a little bit easier. That's the idea behind it, right? So practice is where it's at, and speed is what I'm testing really at the end of the day, right? So what I want to do first, before we get into the next slides and stuff like that, I'm going to talk about the mid-semester exam next week, and then I'm going to get right into your homework review. Okay, so let's talk about that. It's coming up. So again, the format is in person only. I'm going to meter it for about 2 hours. That's how long it's going to take, and I'll tell you why. It's not because I'm not going to give you the 3 hours or whatever. You'll have the 3 hours, but by the time you come in, I give you your document to do what you have to do. Set up. You're going to bring in your ID, please. Get your student ID for next week, please. I need it. You're going to sign in to the exam. I'm going to ask you to leave your phones and your bags and all that kind of stuff in the front, because you're not going to be able to use your phone other than creating your GitHub repository. If you needed to create a GitHub repository. In this case, you don't. You have DevOps. So I don't think you need to log in. But what I may ask you to do ahead of time, I'll send a note out to you guys maybe on the Wednesday. Is like say, okay, create your DevOps repo now, so that way you don't have to actually use two-factor or something if you need to get in there, for your exam. Okay, so I may do that. We're going to work on a project like it says. I'm going to give you some assets. You might have assets to include or something else, or new assets that, to build. So there might be some stuff like that as well. I may build it into a starter project. So in other words, instead of you downloading your in-class exercise 6 from this week and starting from there, some people may not complete it this week for whatever reason. So I'm going to give everyone a fair shake and basically include everything you need in a starter. So I may ask you to pull it down from OneDrive like we've done in the past. And that takes time, right? So because, like I said, even if I gave you 3 hours, there's preamble, like I tell you what to do, blah, 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 whatever. So you really don't have 3 hours, right? There might be some C++ that you need to do, not a lot. Again, we've been just scratching the surface so far. This first half of the semester gets you comfortable with how the workflow is. And then you're probably going to build a new feature or two, something like that. You can maybe modify something else, modify something that exists already. And then we're going to have a PowerPoint report. I know that people freak out when I say like a little presentation, but really what it is just your title slide. So the title slide that you should be using now for your videos right now is the one that I want you to use for this. Almost like I want you to extend that little PowerPoint slide deck if you have it already. And then there's going to be a slide on, hey, what went well? How did you do? Kind of thing. And then there might be a what didn't go so well? What couldn't you do? Like maybe there's something that you got stuck on or whatever. I want to try and give you as many marks as possible, and sometimes that requires me to give you like I said before, some part marks, and I need you to talk about the stuff that's working for you and the stuff that's not. You need a DevOps repository. You need a YouTube video showcasing your work. How do you do a YouTube video in class? You need to run OBS as an example, and then what you're going to do, you're not going to necessarily record your voice. I don't need that. I just need you to showcase your work. So show me that it's working and all that kind of stuff. Again, you can also write some stuff in your PowerPoint. So if you want to talk to me about something that was working or didn't work, as an example, but I want to see the actual thing like running. I don't need necessarily to look at all your code unless I ask you to do that. Like if I say, show me your code or something. The instructions for what I want you to submit will be on your document that you're going to get. Typically, what I would do is I'll give you a document in hand, right? So I may decide to give you a PDF. We'll see how it goes next week. It really depends on, various factors. But the only thing, I'm going to say this as well, that's going to stop us from getting this done in person next week is for whatever reason, if we're disrupted because of the current strike that's going on. And if that's the case, where we're instructed to go online or something like that, that's the only time that we'll move this online. Okay, so that's what's happening there. So then, yeah, so you submit all that, you have your project ready to go, and then you submit it, and then it's done. And then usually the next week during reading week, I'll go through everything, mark it all for you. Just to remind you that next week's exam is worth 20% of your final grade, so please take it seriously in terms of what you have to do. Again, so that may require you to go over the work you've done already, right? So there might be a little bit of work that you've been doing, things that you don't understand. There are spaces still for me if you want to meet with me starting on Tuesday. I'm not going to meet with anyone on Monday because Monday is the holiday. We have Thanksgiving next week, right? So, but Tuesday and Wednesday, I will take some appointments. If you, book them now, I think it might be a smart thing to do, just in case you have any questions or things that you just can't get for whatever reason. Again, I'm not gonna. In terms of like stuff you can look at my code, you can look at your code. Your own code. You cannot surf on the web in any way. You can't do a Google search. Can't do anything to do with looking at a Reddit channel or something weird or Stack Overflow. Can't do any of those things, right? So you're not going to get any help from the internet. You can look at documentation from Unreal Engine. All right. So if there's something that's an Unreal Engine you want to look at because the actual docs, you can look at those. You can look at my PowerPoint slide deck, the slide deck. You cannot watch my videos. Okay. So video watching during the exam, not allowed. So you can't go like, what did Tom do? No, you can't do that because other people are in the class with you. So no video watching, no AI, but not like AI is going to really help that much anyway, other than maybe your code. So that's why I'm saying you're going to leave your bags at the front, your electronics and stuff like that can't be with you, and then you do your test. Questions around this, the first part, which is your mid-semester test and what's going on for next week. Any questions at all? And if a question comes to mind and you don't know, or you don't want to ask because some people don't like to ask in front of everybody, you can always send me an email or ping me on Discord if you want to talk about that, something that you're concerned about. Oh yeah, that's a good question, Joshua. No, you can totally use your own machine. That's perfectly fine. The only thing I'd ask when you launch a machine is no chat apps. So you can't have anything like WhatsApp, Signal, even Discord has to be turned off, all that kind of stuff. So you can't use those things. So you can't communicate with each other or anybody else. So as long as those things are good, you can use your machine. If I see you with any of that stuff, and I'll put together a list ahead of time the day before saying, these are all the things you can't do. These are the things you can do. And I'll also include that in the exam details just to make sure that everyone's knows what's happening. Because if you do any one of those things, you just get 0 and they'll ask you to leave. Also, next week, please make sure you're on time. So 20 minutes into the exam, if you're not there, you can't write, okay? Some people have asked to write later. Like what if I wanted to write on the later time? You gotta let me know ahead of time, right? So like if you're gonna write at 11 o'clock somehow, I don't know how you do that because I know you have class with Connor, and I think you guys are doing what, presentations next week, mid-semester checkpoint probably, if I'm not wrong. So not sure that you can do that. I won't let you write early. And what about if you have accommodations and you need to have more time, right? So that's a whole other thing. So one thing that we can do if you're a student that has accommodations is, again, please, I know who you are, right? Because I have you all listed, but please connect with me on Discord and I'll work something out with you individually, okay, if you have an accommodation. And that's a recorded accommodation that you've gone through, you know, then I'll honor those, okay? All right. So that is your mid-semester test. Again, if you have any questions, concerns, whatever, please let me know. But that's coming up next week, and we'll do 2 of them. Most likely, because there's 2 sections, I will produce, slightly different exams between the 2 sections. So exam A might be, slightly different than exam B. They should be around the same difficulty. You might have a different feature to build or something else like that, but for the most part, they will be the same. They might have the same base, but there might be some other differences, right? So like always. All right, so what I want to do now, if there's no other questions around this, is I want to talk about, last week's homework. So I don't want to do this yet. I want to kind of go back to this last week. We talked about adding a game mode. I'm going to go through it like step by step because I know some people need it. They got stuck at certain places and they didn't understand. They got all these errors and that kind of stuff. And I want to go through it with you. I know it's going to be time. It's going to take about 40 minutes or so. Then I'm going to get through it. It might take a little longer, but I want to go through it because it's really important that we understand how I did everything, so that way next week you know what to do. So if you're someone who's already completed last week's stuff, and this is just a review. All right, so again here, what I want to do is I'm going to bring up Unreal Engine. So what I've done here is I've created a couple of copies of in-class exercise 5, and I've made in-class exercise 6 and 6A ready for you in the next class. So here's 6, right? And I'm just going to double click and start the project, right, just from scratch here. So this one, I've got the city is built. The drones have been added. I think I've added 5 drones, and I've added some pickups. So the pickups all work. You can pick up stuff, and it's gonna give you health, or it's also gonna give you ammo. Okay, so this is what this thing is. So I'm assuming that you at least got to this point. All right, because this is what was required within class exercise 4, kind of, and then in class exercise 5 we just built a city. So building the city didn't take that long. I know some people had issues, different issues with doing this kind of stuff because their computer was a little slow. I had a couple of videos that were like super slow in terms of how this looked. And what I'm going to do here, just for the people on Zoom, is I'm going to just go to optimize for video sharing. So hopefully that is going to make it a little bit better, hopefully. Okay. All right, so that's what I have. I'm going to run this project. Of course, that's what I always do starting off because I want to make sure that the project works. So you can see that it's working. I kind of go in within the space kind of this dude. He's going to come at me and explode, right? And then when I've taken damage, I can also kill a guy. There we go. I'm getting some minor warnings, and then I'm going to go in here and pick up some health. And on the other side, typically I put in, on my project, I put in the kind of an ammo pickup, right? And so I can see that the ammo pickup works. Everything works, okay? So that's the first thing. I always try and do that. I'm trying to work out something so that it's all working. I think that's an important thing to do, right? Because otherwise what ends up happening is if you don't do that, then the problem with it is you're assuming that things are working, but then they're not, right? So we don't want that to happen. All right, so that's the first thing. So the next part is adding the new features. So I'm just going to go back to this, and then the first thing it says is add in a new widget blueprint called this. Now, some people got confused about doing this. They forgot how to do this kind of stuff. They spent a lot of time. Remember, where you want to put it is in the HUD. You want to right click here. You want to go down to user interface and then widget blueprint. You want to go here. You want to click this. There's other classes here as well, but just ignore them for now. We may hit them this semester or next. Click user blueprint and then type in that thing that I asked you to do, which is WP game mode UI. So that's the first thing. And again, I see that I'm not doing that. Just to speed things up, I'm going to go to editor preferences, and I'm going to go to putting things in the main window. This is where I want them. Okay, so there we are. So this is the first thing. I definitely need a canvas. Typically what we want is a canvas panel, which we put in, and then the PowerPoint basically tells me that I need this. I'm just going to put the PowerPoint off screen so I can just kind of do it instead of going back and forth. It might be a little bit annoying. So what it's telling me is I need a text block. And so here's a text block. I'm going to put this on screen. And it's giving me the instructions about where to put it. So usually what I say is, here's the anchor for this one. And the anchor looks like it's supposed to be the top right corner, right? So that's the first thing. You have to look at that. And then I'm going to do a minus 500 for the position, as well as 70 for the position on the Y, which puts us in the top right corner of this stuff. The size is 245. This is right from the slides. I'm just going over the slide stuff, right? And then the height is 40. And that's kind of what we have. So then we're going to put this as time remaining. That's what it's going to say, time remaining, right? And then some kind of, we're going to also change the name of this thing. So this is like the time remaining label, right? And that's what I've told you. Again, this is right from the PowerPoint. So time remaining label. We don't need to add this as a variable because we're not going to change the time remaining labels. That's what the first thing is. Next, what we're going to get into now is I want another one of these, right? So again, fast way to do it is copy paste, right? So we have another one. And then what I would do next is change this to something that it's supposed to be, like for example, time text. This is a variable, and it should say something like, just as a value. I'm going to put in 000000. So that is the time. I'm going to put it in the right location, which is minus 245 relative to the top right anchor, and 70 again, right? And then the size is 145 because we want to be keeping it the same, and 40. So there's those two things. That's the second one. Okay, next. So I'm going to go to the next one. Okay, so now, I want to put in a drones remaining, kind of thing. That's what it's going to be. So again, it's another label. So I'm going to copy paste. Again, it's instead of me having to drag and drop it over here, it's a little faster. I'm going to get the drones remaining label and put it out there. Right, there it is. There's a label, and it should say drones remaining. So here we go. So just put in there drones remaining. And this should have really been your first step to everything that you're going to do. So I know that 125, there we go. That doesn't look right. Minus 525. Minus 525. That'd be okay. And then, so again, I think one of the things that people get wrong is that, they start off with the wrong, kind of velocity. They're like, they look and they're trying to see what needs to be done. step through each one, like I'm doing the same thing as you would do. And then, you know, as you're asked to do something, put it together. Remember, there's marks associated with everything that you do, right? So this is drones text. Um, and so it's important for you guys to try and get as much as you can done. And I know some people are like, why is it about speed? Like some people, one person kind of like, you know, send me a thing like that. Like, why do we care if it's about speed? Well, you know, one thing you get metered on when you're working is how much you can produce in a day. So this is kind of like a good, you know, indicator for you as to, you know, if you were working for somebody, what would it be, right? So, and the other thing is just familiarity with the Unreal interface. I want you guys to get ready because as we move into more complicated things, you know, I'm going to ask you to do more and more, right? So, okay, the next one is warm-up text. So I'm going to grab this for now, copy paste, and put it in the middle somewhere. Now the anchor for this one is the middle. So again, changing anchors, just go up here versus anchors, go to the middle, and that's where it's going to go. So that's the center. The position is 0, 0. So that's something that I'm going to do because we want to center it. And then the size is 150, you know, as an example, by 90. This is where it's going to be. This is like your number, you know, that's going to come up on the screen, right? Alignment is important because that kind of aligns to the viewport. So that's kind of like half the viewport is right in the middle. And again, if I zoom, you know, zoom in there, you can see it. And most likely, I mean, you're going to start off with like something like a number 3, right? So you're going to have like 3 seconds to get ready. So it's going to be like a 3. And that's going to give you some example of what that would look like. I also said that we should change the justification to center. That's this, you know, kind of thing. And I also asked you to make the font size appear as 60. So if I go to 60, you can see that 3 is right there. That's what it will look like. And again, this is just an example of this. Now, this definitely needs to be a variable and needs to have its own name, which is warm-up text. And some people got this wrong, where they put the variable in here and they're like, I can't get access to it. Well, if you don't click this is variable, you're not going to get access to it. This is what you need to do. This is what's going to make it available to you outside of here. So compile and save. All right, let's go to the next one. So now the announcement text. So this again, so I would say that I'm going to copy paste this one. And then here's the other one. And again, it doesn't matter where it is right now. And now this one, the anchor is supposed to be top right, top center. This area here, that's the new anchor. So again, the position is going to be 0. It looks like the position Y is 265. There it is. And then the size is much larger. So 1280, you know, as an example, by 120. So much larger text there. And the alignment is 0.5 and 0 this time. So they're like this. And then we're going to get a font size that is 70. So 70 font size, which is pretty good. And it should say something like some kind of announcement. So I'm just going to put in for something like this. So it's a announcement. So we know what that is. That's where it will be. It'll say something like, you know, clear the level. You died. You know, one of those kind of things. That's where it's going to appear there. All right. And then after that, that is your all the stuff you need to start going. Now, what we really need, because this is going to layer on top of your ammo and your health. Health is going to be on the top left corner. Ammo is going to be on the bottom right corner because that's from the other thing that we made already. What we need to do now is this announcement has to have a variable. So it needs to be called announcement. So right now, again, if I left it this way, I can't get access to it. If you change this to this, make this visible, compile and save. And now I'm going to go into the graph. So the graph is here. So this is the designer. On the right side of the widget is the graph. Click on the graph. Now you have all this. I'm just going to delete all this because I don't need it right now. And what I want to do next is add in, you know, some other stuff later on. For now, right, my WVP game mode UI is ready to go. So I'm just going to go into the next stage, which it really tells me to go into my adding a game mode UI to the FPS HUD. So that was something that people also got wrong for something, for whatever reason. The FPS HUD, remember that this thing here, it gets instantiated, created, when your game mode gets added into the game when it first starts. Remember the game mode, just to remind you how this works, and people forgot about this, is if you look at Blueprint's character, there is something called FPS game mode. FPS game mode has all this stuff, and what we're doing is the HUD class is a typical default HUD class, but we've specified our own, which means when this game starts, just to show you this, right? Then what it does is it instantiates some stuff here on the side. So take a look at this. Let's take a look. I don't care if I die. I care more about this. So let's take a look at what it gives you. Drones and blah, blah. And then what you're going to see is stuff that starts, eventually when I get to it. There we go. All this stuff here happens automatically. Notice that there's a bunch of AI controllers. Each of these AI controllers have been, kind of added for each drone. There's 5 drones, 5 AI controllers. Some ammo, and look at this. There's the game mode 0. Game mode 0, that is the thing we've created that gets instantiated. When the game mode comes into the level, it also drops in the FPS HUD. Now there is a delay when this happens, and sometimes what happens is if the FPS HUD gets added in after you're trying to access it, you're going to get a null reference error because it doesn't exist yet and you're trying to get stuff from it. This is why we have the delays in place. It's a bit of a hack, but that's what we use it for. So back to this. So now we know that I want to add something into my FPS HUD. And just like we did before, I want to create a new widget. So the way to do that is, create. If I just hit create widget, here it is. And again, for those people just coming in, please forgive my voice. It's just, I'm a little bit under the weather today. You can see here, game mode UI is what I want. So now it becomes this node that we were looking for. Now I want to save the game mode UI, and I can do that by right-clicking here, and I want to promote this to a variable. Promoting it to a variable, I want to change this to game mode UI. That is the variable we're going to use. I'm going to open the little I here so I can access it outside of here. So this is instance editable, kind of thing. I want to be able to access it. And then I'm going to add it to viewport, right? So again, I can just go here and add to viewport. Here it is. And now I have this thing added to viewport, but I need to connect these things. Sometimes people forgot to do these things. There's a quick way of doing this too. If I come from here and go add to viewport, then it automatically connects these two things together. So you can avoid, missing that. That's a step that's critical. If you don't have this, it'll never appear. And they're like, I don't know why, but my viewport didn't appear. It didn't appear because you don't have this line, right? All right, so compile and save, and let's see what we get right now. We should see something, but it's not going to do anything, all right? And there you are. So there's your time remaining and, your announcement 3, and that's what you should have had at minimum for those kind of things. Okay, good. Now, because we've added something, let's open up Visual Studio. A couple ways to do this. One way is to go to Tools, right? And as a Generate Visual Studio project, there's a new C++ class and all this kind of stuff. So there's a lot of things here you can do that we haven't really covered. But clearly the one thing we want to do is just double click on your solution, right? So if you double click on the solution, it's related to this, it's going to bring up Visual Studio. And then from there, what I want to do is I want to use my PowerShell and Visual Studio to put this up on DevOps. All right. So DevOps, of course, requires me to make while that's getting ready, I'm going to make a new repository called i6. So there's i6 repository. I'm going to off-click this one and click on this. And then once I uncheck that one, I don't want to add a README file right now, but I have all these steering instructions. I want to grab these, these pieces right here. I'm going to go back to Visual Studio when it decides to be open. And I'm going to go to View when it decides to let me. And I say it decides because I'm actually running ReSharper on the background. It takes a little bit of time to do that. And then here, when it comes down to this, I'm going to right click and then press enter. And now if everything goes well, this should be allowing me to push to DevOps. Okay, so that's the first part. So I've pushed to DevOps for the first time. This takes my project right now with the current commits, which is probably going to say something like added project files for i6, one of those kind of things. And then we should be pretty much good to go. Let's take a look here. As it's pushing. Now your speed might be better or worse than mine. Whatever is going to look right for you. Let's take a look here. There's a part of today that we're going to build our app as well, and that takes quite a bit of time building. I know you guys have done that with Steve, some of you. Hopefully you know how to do that. There are some tricks that we need to go through to make it work today. And I mean, there's some things about our project that requires us to do a little bit of pre-work that is specified. One thing I'm going to do, because I really haven't done that yet, is I'm going to open up those things on Blackboard. Now, there's nothing for you to follow along with yet because we haven't really touched on the new stuff. It's just the old stuff that I'm looking at right now. But just for you to speed along if you want to, or if you're one of these students who's already has all this in place and you just want to move forward without me, I'm just going to make that available for you, right? And I'm also going to make the in-class exercise available too. Again, this in-class exercise 6, right? So, you know, assuming that you've done all the other stuff. Okay, so this is it. I'm going to refresh now, and we should have our DevOps up. And you can see that the history basically says added project files for i6. That's what I did. I also added some pickups because my project from last week, for whatever reason, maybe I didn't push. So here are the pickups, and the level has been updated. And that's pretty good. And then now I can go back to Unreal Engine and continue with everything I've done. But what I also want to do is I want to say git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say added WBP game mode UI, which is really what I did, right? And I want to add a feature. I want to push it to GitHub. And when you're doing your exam next week, you should have similar workflows when you do something, or GitHub DevOps. When you add a feature, you know, try and remember to push it. Okay. Next. All right. So now that I've done that and I've added my next part, it's got setting the number of drones. So this is the next part I'm at right now, and this is the old PowerPoint. I'm on, you know, slide 44. You know, so getting there. You know, so it basically says now go to the BP_FPS game mode. So that's the next piece I'm going to do. I'm going to go back to this to do it. So that's kind of what I had before. Here it is, right? I'm going to open this in full blueprint editor mode. And then in the event begin play, notice that the event begin play is blank. I want to use a sequence node. If I type sequence, it adds that in, right? Here's my sequence node. I don't need the event tick right now, so I'm going to get rid of it. And then in the sequence node, this is really great. I always look at sequence nodes as line numbers, like lines in code. So if you're going to compare this something like C++ or C#, each one of these sequences is like a line of code. So it makes it easier for me to think about, you know, coding this. So I want a delay. So this is the first thing I want to add in. So here's my delay. It's 0.2 seconds by default. It has to be, whenever we add delays, it has to be here inside the main event graph. It can't be inside of a function. It won't work. And then what I want to do is I want to get actor of class. That's what I said here. And I want to get the actor that is BP_FPS HUD, right? So there's the HUD. And then what I want to do with this is I want to promote this to a variable. So again, right click, promote to variable, and we're going to call this HUD. All right, that's how we did it before. There we go. And this is the first part. And this is like us getting a reference to the HUD, get reference to HUD. That's what we're going to do here. And again, I'm just following along with PowerPoint. If you're someone who didn't get this done, this might be helpful. You know, maybe you didn't. I always add a reroute node too, because then you can do one of these, move things around. A little bit easier to do that. I want to set the number of drones now, and the next, what I want to do is I want to get all actors of class. Get all actors of class. This is kind of like get game objects, you know, in you know, kind of in Unity. Kind of the same idea, right? Where you're kind of enumerating, or it's going to go through all the objects that are currently in game. And of course, I want to find drones in this case. How many drones are there? Well, this is going to give me an array. That's what this is. This is an array. And what I want to do is, depending on the length of the array, so this is the length, how many members do I have? Like it basically loops through each of the objects and enumerates them all. Then what I want to do is I want to output this number to the UI. But in order for me to do that, I need a reference to the HUD. That's this, right? And then from the HUD, I want to get the game mode UI. And I can get this because when I went to my game mode UI, right, this is the one that has all the details. So if I go to designer, this is where all this stuff is. And I need to get a reference to this from my FPS HUD because that has a reference to the game mode UI that I just made. There's my game mode UI. So I'm doing it here in FPS game mode. So then from there, then what I want to do is I want to get the drones text. There it is. Here's the drones text. And then from there, I want to set text. So that is how I got that one. So that is the process. From there, I connect it here. So execution pins must be connected in order for them to work. I've noticed some of you don't do that. Like you don't connect the execution pin right away. You should, right? Because if you don't have these connected, none of this is going to fire. Or it's going to work. And then from here, the length is going to be converted into text. I just can connect these. And then Unreal Engine is going to connect it. Now, warning, get actors of class. If you look at the to text, if you go in there, there's some options in here. And we're going to get back in there where you can say the minimum integral digits, how many digits that you're going to have in, and the maximum, how many maximum and minimum digits. If I want to start counting from 0, as an example, then I'm going to put 2 in there. Instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 drones, I want to have 2 digits minimum. That means it's going to be 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3. It's up to me how I want that to look. All right, so this is the counting stuff that I'm doing, and that's what this does, so that it updates how many drones. Let's try this out. So compile and save and test, and we should see a number of drones right away, right? And then it says drones remaining 99. Huh, what happened? Like, why didn't this work, right? Because, it's event begin play, and we should be updating the HUD, right? Because this is drones remaining 99. But what if I shoot one? So if I go in here and go like, shoot one, right? Does it update anything? The answer is no, not right now. Why? And it tells me right here why. It says access none, trying to read property HUD. Okay, so that's what it's doing. It says set text, right? So this is people got this error, and can anyone, right, from here, trying to figure out why. So here is the HUD, right? So here is the owning player and everything else. This is where I get my game mode UI, right? And inside of my BPS game mode, here's my game mode, right? I create a HUD reference. Here it is right here, right? And then down in here, what I'm doing is I'm trying to access the HUD. This is happening on event begin play. So think about this. My BP underscore FPS game mode, it's getting instantiated when my game is coming in. And someone says I have no delays. Well, I have a delay here. So I want to get actors of class, but somehow this didn't work, kind of thing. Because, I could put another delay in here. So let's say, for example, I don't know, I'm going to do one of these, and I take this delay, copy paste it, why not, put it in here and put it in, right? So we'll just kind of do one of these, bypass everything. Let's try this down, right? So if I go here and I go do like this, and then do I get the drones? And look, now I get the drone count. This goes back to what we said before, which is you need to think about what's happening. Now I do fix this later on in the PowerPoint, right? But you need to kind of wait. So that's the first thing. Test to see that it all works. In your mind, you should see what's happening, how this thing is working. It's not just a blind go ahead. This is why I'm trying to get this out to you, so you start thinking about what's going on next. So I want to do number of drones. So I want a variable called number of drones. And again, we're still inside of the BP underscore FPS HUD, right? So, or game mode. So I want to add a new variable called number of drones. And the new number of drones variable is going to be integer. So I want to record this. I want to know that now that I've got it, here's where I got the number of drones. I count them, right? As an example. And what I want to do is when I get actor of class in between these two things, this is a middle step. What I'm really saying is, hey, can we count the number of drones and record this? So I'm just going to, kind of move this out a little bit like this. So right here, this is the number of drones, and I can promote this to a variable if I want to, but I already have this number of drones. So I'm just going to set this. So again, Alt drag right on top of here will set the number of drones. It'll connect that right away. Okay, so I can do one of these, I can do one of these, and that is the number of drones. And instead of me having this extra line here, I can disconnect it. That's what I've done. And I can just do a control drag right on top of here. And so what it does is it connects the number of drones. There it is. So that kind of records the number of drones, compile and save. Right, here we go. And if I can also run it in here really quickly instead of me opening up my thing, so I can see that this actually works. There we go. And that's the next part. That's the number of drones. Yay, awesome. All right, and it's getting rather ugly is what I say. And so what I want to do is I want to collapse this all into a function. Now, people had trouble with this. I showed you what to highlight. It's all of this part, but not the delay. Don't do delay. If you had a delay in there because you were testing it out, I'm going to put a delay there in a second. But all I need is all of this. Remember that any delay cannot go into a function. It needs to stay on the main event graph, right? So here it is. I'm going to right click here, and then I'm going to do collapse to function. And the function is going to be called set drone count. That's what that is. So there's my set drone count function. Here it is, right? So that's what you should have had at this point. Test, 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 my friends. If it didn't work, if it doesn't work now, it's never going to work, right? Some people do something and then they just go ahead and go from one slide to the other. Test, 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 because you know it's gonna. You can test to see any changes you made are working. All right. Next, now that we've done that, we have set drone count, and that's what it should look like. But then what I said is move this delay from here to here. So I really don't need this delay. Well, let's just test to see this is true or not. So again, I can disconnect these, and this is where I fixed it, right? And I kind of put this together, and I can put these kind of right in here, and then this is what yours should look from that slide. Now, again, I'm on slide 48 now. Compile, save, and test, right? So we can see that that is the way it is. And you can see 99. Look at that. Drone counts went away, right? So when you make a change like this, you know, I've told you to do something, and if it doesn't work, I mean, or here's something that also happened. It went away because I took away that thing. So let's go set drone count. I don't know. I deleted that by accident. There we go. Let's try that again. There we go. And hey, look at that drone count. Even though I only have one delay, not two, it's okay. All right, so now that I'm pretty good, I've counted drones, right? Great place to put this up on DevOps. So again, file, save all, go back to Visual Studio where I have my DevOps, git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say added set drone count function, right? And git push. All right, now I do a lot of commits normally when I'm running, and the reason why I want to do a lot of commits is because I can always revert if I have a problem with my project later on, right? So that's why I do it. All right, next. So so now in our set drone count function, it should look like this. That's what it basically says, right? So I did this slide. This is not really a slide for you to do. It's just a check slide. Does it look like this? If it does, you're good. Compile and save, right? Next, let's further simplify the set drone count function by collapsing part of it we will use in another function. So what I'm saying is we took some part of it, this part, right? And I want to take all of this part right here, and collapse it into a function called update drone count on HUD. So again, right click, collapse to function. We'll call this update drone count on HUD, right? And that makes it really simple because basically it is nice and easily readable there, right? We can say, okay, so my set drone count, it kind of counts how many that we have. We have a length, we set the number of drones, and then we update the drone count on HUD. Let's take a look at that function to make sure it looks nice. Okay, it looks kind of like this. That's what I kind of said. Compile and save. And let's test again to make sure that still everything is working, right? Hopefully you've seen a theme here. Yeah, test, 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 right? Next, setting the number of drones in the UI, right? Let's make a new function called drone died. All right, new function, drone died, right? Drone died. And here's the drone died function. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to get the number of drones. Here's the number of drones. And then what I'm going to do is minus minus, right, which is a decrement operator. The decrement operator automatically does that. Instead of me having to say get drone count, number of drones, and then subtract the, subtract 1, which is what I'm doing here, and then set the drone count to the new drone count, right? This does it all in one. The decrement operator does all that for you. And then because we have that funky function, we can update the drone count on HUD again. So this is when my drone died, it is going to allow me to reduce the number. Instead of having 5, it's going to go to 4 or 3 or whatever, right? So that's what it's going to be. Compile and save. So let's go back to Visual Studio and git add dot, git commit -m. We'll say added drone died function. There we go. Again, I don't have to always push, but at least put in the commit. Next. Okay, so then when I've done that is navigate back to the BP underscore drone now. All right, so that means another function, another thing. So BP underscore drone is here. And there it is. And then what it says is go to the event begin play. Here's the event begin play. And I've got this part right here, but it wants me to insert more code in here. So again, I want to get game mode. So this gets a reference to the game mode, but I want to cast it to my custom game mode because game modes exist for all objects, but I want to be able to cast to mine. So cast to BP underscore FPS game mode. If it's successful, the cast, that means it does exist in the scene, right? Then and only then do I want to promote it to a variable here. And it says as BP underscore FPS game mode. Some people left it like this. Don't leave it like this. Change the variable name so it's like instead of as, you can call it whatever you want. So I can kind of come up to the variable up here or rename it the other way, and then just call this FPS game mode. There it is. Here's my FPS game mode variable. And then from there, I want to connect to my timer and all that stuff that I had before. So this is where this is, kind of connecting this to this. And let's do a little bit of documentation. So this right here is I want to set initial timer and save its handle. That's what I did there. And we'll make that black. So just to make sure that that is, I thought I saved it. Okay, here, let's do that again. Black. And same thing goes with this part. This is get reference. This part right here is getting a reference to the game mode. So this is get reference to game mode, right? That's what that is. And then from there, I'm going to go here and press OK. Okay, so I got a couple things here. Again, I always recommend having an extra reroute node here because what if I want to make this something different in the future? Same thing with over here. Adding reroute nodes just by double clicking is not going to hurt you in any way. All right, so this is good. Compile and save. So that is where I've just got a reference to the game mode, as an example. Next, okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is in the blueprint, I'm going to go to the take damage function. That's over here. So take damage is a combat function, and this is the thing I have right now. And then there is if the health is 0 explode, this part right here, right, where it basically checks, it says, okay, well, I play my explosion, I play my explosion sound, I destroy the actor. But before I destroy the actor, this is a great place to do that thing. So I'm going to get access to the FPS game mode that I just made, get, right? And then from there, I'm going to, kind of go to drone died and activate that function. The function exists because FPS game mode, which is what I just had over here, I just created this drone died function. And so that's why it's available here if I get a reference to the game mode. So here I'm going to connect this one and this one. And then if we did everything properly, if we compile and save and test just right here, right, then maybe, right, we should be able to, well, it also says for me to, I'll do that now as well. So sorry, before I do that, let's go back to activate explosion radius, right? So it also tells me to do the same thing in here where there is this part right here, but kind of the same thing, right? So if I bump into the drone or if I kill it, either way it's going to die. So I need to kind of put that same thing in there. And I can be tricky about this by taking these two little nodes, copy them, and then go back into that activate explode radius and paste them in here. There it is. And then from there, I can just kind of inject those two right here by just connecting the execution pins. So there we go. So that I've done that, tricky, compile and save. There we go. Run it now. Let's make sure it works. And so what this works out, if we want to test it two ways, I want to bump into a node here, into a drone. Okay, it went to 4, and I also want to destroy a drone somewhere. Oh, there it is. There's my other drone to destroy, right? And it went to 3. So now we know it works. Okay, this is a great place to put it up on GitHub or DevOps. So compile, file, save all, and then we want to go back down here and say git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say implemented Drone death with counter. Here we go. Nice. All right, and now we're going to go to the next page. Again, we're on page 54. Some people didn't even get to 54 when we were together last week, and that's pretty crazy, right? So 54 basically says compile, save, and test. That's all it does, and then we should see that it works. Okay, now we're into game states, right? So that's what it says here to do. Setting up game states. This is where we actually have the winning condition. Before it was just counting drones. Do we make it work or not? So back to this. So the winning condition. How do we do that? Well, it tells me, and this is a trick as well. It tells me that I need to add in a, this new thing, which is a enum. I actually gave the enum right here too, right? So, I mean, the easiest thing is just to copy all this. That's what I would do. Copy, right? And then what we're going to do is I'm going to go to the editor and I'm going to save all. I always close the editor down when I'm making changes to Visual Studio. Now, this is where some people had trouble, right? And they're like, I can't for the life of me make the game states work. Of course you can't if you put it in the wrong spot. I've told you this a couple of times. You can't put it, add an enum or anything else manually like this unless you put it in the right spot. Let's try it. So if I right click here and I want to add in a new item, right? Again, you might see the compact view like this. Don't go here, don't put it here. Just go show all templates. It'll show you this. And then we need the name, which is EFPS state. Let's put that in there. So EFPS state, EFPS state. Okay. Oh man, what did I do? I did it by accident and it looks like it's in the right spot. Or maybe you just selected OK. Take a look at this, how it says, like there's a little ignored thing. See that? Right? There's a little mark there. And even if I was to put my code in here, here's my code, right? It's never going to work. Why is this never going to work if I just did that? If I just pressed OK, or even by accident like I just did. Does anyone tell me why? Why will this never work? Never, ever. No one knows? Not public. Nope. Andrew says it's not in the right place. It isn't in the right place. It is not in the right place. Let's try this again. So I'm going to delete this now. And I'm going to delete, so remove, and it's going to say, I'm going to delete it, like straight up delete, okay? And let's try this again. So again, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to add this in, add new item, and we'll go slower this time, because people do this, right? Here it is, EFPS state. EFPS state. Okay, and instead of pressing add or pressing enter, like some of you did, take a look at where this is going, guys. It's going into my intermediate project files. This is incorrect. By default, this is where Unreal sends stuff. It's wrong. You have to click browse and you have to go into i6 or whatever it's called, your project, into source, into the actual project folder, and this is where it goes. Then click select folder, right? So that is the right place. That means that's in here, right? If I press add, now I have a place where I'm going to put that in. This will work. However, this core minimal stuff, it got all these errors and it bothers some of you because, it bothered me too. How do you fix these errors, right? So first of all, save and then Control F5 to relaunch Unreal Engine. All right, so this is kind of like the process that you would do. All right, so again, I'm adding it in. You need to put it in the right spot. If it's not in the right spot, what's going to happen is you won't be able to get your session state. You don't get your session state, then you can't move on with everything else that's going on, and then you're stuck. This is as far as I got, Tom, is what I got sometimes, right? And you lost all kinds of marks because you didn't do the last part, maybe 2 marks, out of 6. All right, so then back to this. Here it is, but we have some stuff like this looks like really bad. Can I fix it from here? Well, there's a trick. So if you go to tools, right? As an example, and if you look all over here, there's generate Visual Studio project files. This is what this does. So you could do that. You could, kind of under all these things here, you can see like there's a bunch of options. And some of them we haven't really, kind of explored. And one of them is like, so why does it say generate Visual Studio project files? It actually generated from here and it'll mark it for the first time, right? One thing that you could do in here is try to unload the project and reload the project, right? That is something that you can do. It may not work, but the point is, this is, even though it tells you like these are all messed up or whatever, they're not really messed up, right? So, I mean, it's still going to work. How do you test it, right? So the way I would test that is move on to the next slide. So here's the slide that says Control F5 to launch editor. We did that. And then what it tells me is to make this new, update warm-up timer function. So this is the one that needs to be put into the BP_FPS game mode. We're going to do that now. So back to that. So I'll show you this. So BP_FPS game mode, we're going to make a new function called update warm-up timer. Now this is where people got stuck. They're like, don't know how you got that, right? So again, let's see how it's going to be. It's telling me we need to make a new variable called warm-up time of type float. All right, so let's make that. So again, new variable, that's up down here. We'll call this warm-up time of type float. Compile and save. Set the number to 3 seconds. That's the 3 second for the warm-up timer. There it is, right? And now, once we've created that, then what we want is we want to get the warm-up time, control drag, and we want to subtract the number of seconds. So get game time in seconds. That's kind of a little nifty helper function that's built in to Unreal Engine, right? Which is cool. And then what I want to do is it basically shows me ceiling to integer 64, which is the next node. And then from there, I want to convert this to text. I'm going to do this in 2 steps here. I need to get a reference to the HUD. Here's the HUD. And then from there, I'm going to get the game mode. And then from the game mode, it's the thing that I want to update, that I want to get, which is the warm-up text. Warm-up text, right? And then from the warm-up text, I want to set text. So this again, so how come, here's something that I want to ask you. Here's set text. And then somehow the set text doesn't work. How come? So sometimes this happens, right? So text, and then it says to text, but I want to do set text. What if you get this situation where you can't do set text from your warm-up text? People are like, I'm stuck. I can't get I can't get my set text because that's where it's coming from, the warm-up text. How can I not get that? Anybody? Not a variable. Okay, let's check. So where is this? This is in here in the game mode UI. All right. So warm-up text, that's this, certainly is a variable. So why is that not available for me then? That's the first thing. Yeah, it is available. You can see that it's open. There's close. There's open, close. There it is. Warm-up text. And warm-up text is this, right? But my thing says drone remaining label. Oh man. So there's a couple problems here, right? So warm-up text, by accident, somehow, I've made the canvas, right? This is my canvas. This is my game mode UI canvas. By accident, somehow. And this happens sometimes, right? Well, look, it's all the labels are right here. This is the warm-up text, not this, right? By the way, I didn't do this on purpose. This is just like your canvas. This could be your game mode UI. You can rename it to something else, like game mode UI canvas. Okay, you don't need this to be a variable. You can uncheck that. But this right here needs to be this thing here that's incorrectly labeled. You can clearly see this is warm-up text. So this is warm-up text. That's what that is. That needs to be a variable. Compile and save, please. Right? And then once you go back here, this is no good anymore, this node. I need to get warm-up text. Get warm-up text. Okay, there it is. There's my warm-up text. And from there, I should be set text. Sometimes it happens. Like, you have a problem. Check your user interface because this is where this is coming from. You should be able to set text on an object, right? If not, something is wrong. You did something wrong, like I did, right? All right, so go back to this. Connect to that. Here's my text, okay? And then I'm going to come up here and connect those. That's the warm-up text. Compile and save, all right? So this is going to be like the 2, 3, 1. I want to call the update warm-up text somewhere, right? But in order for me to do that, I'm going to go into the again into the event tick now, right? So, but in order for me to do that, I want to make a variable called session state. So again, new variable, session state. right? And then down here, it's going to be of type. This is where we test our enum of type EFPS state. Look how it comes up. Wonderful. So that's what it is, EFPS state. If it didn't come up, then you know something's wrong with your enum on Visual Studio. If it did come up, that's probably a good indicator things are okay. All right, next, I want to go into the event graph, and into the event graph, oh, this happens sometimes too. What happens if you like double click and you get all this weirdness happening? How do I fix this problem? You know, if you're, people said that sometimes they're like, I don't know why, but like, you know, I got this thing down here and I can't do anything about it. Remember, Unreal Engine has some really interesting stuff where you can go to your view, right? And if I go to window and I can go load layout, I can load the default editor layout anytime I want, which will basically load everything the way it was. So here's my content drawer again. I can dock that, and I can add anything into the you know, that I have in the content area before. So here it is, so content drawer. I want to dock it in layout. There it is. And one thing I'm missing here because I messed up was my output log, which I always want right there too. Okay, so back to the FPS game mode. I'm back to this. I was able to recover the way my thing looks by just going to, again, you know, window and then load layout, default editor layout. You can also save your layout. If you like a layout a certain way, like you want to work things in a different way, please save your layout. So you can always go back to that instead of like, you know, oh man, I messed up. I don't know where my layout is. Next, okay, so now that I've got that, it tells me to go back into my event graph, and I have an event begin play, but I don't have an event tick because I took it away. Let's add it in. Event tick. There it is. Here's my event tick, and then from there, I need to get my session state. Here's my session state, and from there, if you type the word in switch, it's going to switch on EFPS state. Another good indicator that your enum and enumeration works, right? So connect these two things up. We know that this is what's going to happen. And then what I want to do is my session state, you know, by default, right? If I compile and save, by default, my session state is warm up. Those are only the states I added in my Visual Studio. If I go back to Visual Studio, there is no none, right? It starts off at warm up, and by default, when you initialize an enumeration, the first one, this one here, is considered the default state. This is the default state of your enumeration, the first one, right? Or the zeroth, if we're going to count, if we're going to use zero-based counting. So back to this. So now that we have warm-up, we can call update warm-up timer. That's going to happen. So what this is doing is saying every tick, which is like an update function in Unity, every tick, it's going to look at the session state variable and it's going to do a switch case. That's what this is in code, right? It's going to say, okay, what is this? If it's warm up, then activate the warm up timer. If it's in progress, if that's the state, then do something else. If it's out of time or player died or player won, these are all different states we're going to define shortly. But this is the first one. We can test this now. All right. So if I kind of compile and save and test, we should be able to see the countdown. I mean, theoretically, right? Let's take a look and see that. 3, 2, 1. There's your warm up, and it goes to 0, and it'll keep counting, right? Because we haven't stopped it in any way. All right. That's pretty cool. So we know this works, so we can add this up, add this on GitHub, so or DevOps. So view, terminal, git git commit -m. We'll say added warm-up timer. Warm-up timer. There we go. Git push. Awesome. Right. Slowly, we're moving along. Okay, so all right, so now that that we've got all those nice things, we're going to go to the next slide, and the next slide now I'm at slide 59. So it says, let's make a new, you know, kind of thing. Again, still inside the FPS game mode. Let's make a new function called disable player input. That's what it says, disable player input. Okay, here's disable player input. How does this work? Gets the player pawn. Here it is. Player pawn is like the default pawn. You can also specify a number if you have multiplayer. I might do that next semester. And then I want to try and cast to BP underscore FPS character. So this is going to try and cast. So it's going to say, can I find the player? Yes or no, right? Does he exist? if he does, this is what happens. If it fails, this is what happens, right? So from there, I want to, kind of pull in disable player input. That's what I want to do. But notice that disable player input doesn't happen. I can do disable input. There it is. And then from there, it creates that. Okay, that's the disable player input function. Compile and save. If I was to call disable player input, can I do that? Can I call in disable player input? You can, but that's like calling the function itself. That's like recursive code. I mean, this is calling itself over and over again. So don't do this. Some people did that. They kind of like thought that this was disable input. This disable input was disable player input, and they called that nothing happens, right? Actually, it creates an error that you're it's bad, right? So that's what it looks like. So I don't want this. I want actually disable input, which is a built-in function, disables the input. So this is what happens when I should be disabled right away. And then when the warm-up timer is ready, then I can move. All right. All right, so that is next. And then what I want to do is we'll modify the event begin play. So guess what it tells me to do. So back to the event graph. Here's my event begin play. And I have these two things. So this is setting the number of drones. So set number of drones. That's what this does. Again, I'm just commenting just so that we're all on the same page here, right? And then I'm going to zoom out and take all of this code and move it up. So I give myself some more room. And then in there, I can add a pin. So there's then two. I've added a pin. And then I disable player input for the warm-up. And I'm going to do that by dragging it in a disable player input function. There it is. And then I can add in a reroute node. There it is. And that's all I want to do. That's the third line of code, if you will. So this is just a little bit of comments. Disable player input for the warm-up. So I can't move, basically, until my warm-up is done. All right, so that's what I'm doing here. Make it look nice. Blow this over, and I got a few things. Again, the reason why I add these reroute nodes is I can do one of these now. I can kind of pull this around to make it look a little nicer. Look at that, much nicer than it was before. And compile and save. All right, so this disables the input. But now what I want to do, of course, is inside of, I want to make another way of enabling my input. All right, so let's do that. Let's add another function. Enable player input. There we go. So enable player input needs a reference to the character. So here inside of my inputs, I'm going to add in something called character. And inside there, what I want to do is I want to get a reference. Now there's a bunch of ways to do this. You could make this of type BP underscore FPS character, BP underscore. So BP underscore FPS character object reference, that's what that is. Or you can make it an FPS character object reference, it's up to you. But either one is fine. Then what I can do is I can get character, that's the variable. Notice that this little F here means it's a variable function, this input, a parameter. I'm just making a copy here instead of dragging the line. And then I want to get controller, right? And I want to cast this controller to, right? And it's player controller. Again, people are confused with the casts, but remember that all character classes have a controller. We want our specific character controller, right? And that means not just all characters, pawns have classes. We want the character version. And that's why we're casting, right? And then from there, I want to get a reference to the character, and I want to enable input now. Enable input, there it is, the default function. Again, don't use recursive code by accident. And I want to connect these two things up, all right? So that's what I did. That's what I did here. So this is the enabling part of the code. So let's enable player input, compile and save. So I added those two functions. Wonderful. All right, and now that I have enable and all that stuff, I want to create a new function called start game. Start game. And the new start game function is going to set the session state. So here's session state. I want to alt drag here to set. And instead of going to warm up, we're going to go to in progress, the next state. And then I'm going to have a sequence node, right, with a few execution pins. So instead of 2, I want to add another one, 3. That's what the graph looks like here. And the first thing was I want to get the player pawn. So get so if I do, here's something, player pawn, right? I notice how it doesn't come up, but if I do get player pawn here, it does come up. So why does it do this, right? Because if I drag here, it's kind of using this context, and this doesn't understand what I really want. Here, in this area, it does understand, and so you have to try it in a couple places, guys. It doesn't work here, it'll work here. All right, next, I want to cast to BP underscore FPS character. So it's basically saying, okay, is the pawn the character? That's what it is, all right? If the character exists, now I want to save a reference to it. So promote this to a variable. We'll call this character. There's my character reference, right? And that's what this part do. This is basically what this is get reference to character. So instead of us doing that casting every single time, it's done once. Sometimes you got to do it again and again, depending on the context. But for the most part, you can save casting and stuff over and over again. Next, now that I have the character, I can drag it in. And from there, I can do something like enable player input because it needs a character reference. This is kind of the neat part. So I can put that in there, double click on here and put that in there. And then do something like enable player input. That's just a little comment so we can see that big. Again, you can adjust the reroute nodes here so that it works nice. And the next one is clear the warm-up timer on the UI. We have to do that. So how do we do that? Well, we got to get a reference to the HUD. So control drag. Then I want to get the game mode. And then from there, I want to get the warm-up timer. Get warm-up timer, warm-up text, right? So this is it. Select all, press Q to make sure that it's all aligned properly. It is. And then we're going to do set text. Right, there it is. And we're not going to set any text. That's just going to clear it out. That's how we're going to clear it. We could create a little function to do that if we really wanted to. Just to be, instead of doing it like this here, but that's fine. I mean, we're not going to clear the text more than one time, so maybe making a function might be redundant. And from here, all we're going to do is something like clear warm-up timer on UI. There we go. Okay, go back in here, click that, come down, and like so. Okay, so that is what this does, and that is the start game method. Compile and save. And then from there, the next part that it's asking me to do is I need to update the warm-up timer function, right? So update warm-up timer, here it is. And what I had is I went up to here where I update the warm-up timer, but now what I want to do is I want to kind of get a reference to what this ceiling to character is, and I want to make sure if it's less than or equal to 0, so if the timer goes down to 0, then I can start the game, right? So again, what I want to do is I want to say that less than or equal to is here. Again, we can create other reroute nodes by double clicking. So I can do this. I could have also promoted this to a variable if I really wanted to be tricky. I don't really care for that right now. And then from here, what I want to do is put it somewhere here, make it look nice. And then from there, I want to branch, right? Branch is like an if statement, right? So I'm going to say basically something like, okay, so if the number of seconds that have passed is less than or equal to 0, or if I'm down to 0 seconds left, the warm-up timer is done. Now I can call start game. Start game is where it's going to put everything in progress, right? So that's what this is going to do. It's going to allow me to move, all right? All right, let's try this out. Compile and save, and let's see how far I've gone. So it should lock my input. I should not be allowed to move. I can't move. But then when I'm done, I can move now. Hey, right? There I am. All right, so that is done. So that is me, kind of adding in, disabling and enabling player input for warm-up. All right, so compile, so file and save all, and then back to Visual Studio and git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say disabled player input until warm-up timer is done. Hit push. There we go. Okay, I'm at slide 63. Next. So again, I know if you've done this already, it can be tedious to watch me, but hopefully this gives you my flow, right? So that way you understand what it is, all right? So bear with me, please. All right, so now we want to get our warm-up timer. It says, first, let's create a new variable called time remaining, right, of type float. So back to this, back to Unreal Engine, and I'm going to be back inside the same area here, and I haven't told you to move, so then here's time remaining, and of type float, here it is, and I want to compile and save, set this to 30 seconds, right, there it is, compile and save, right? And then next, create a new function named update game timer. Okay, so new function, update game timer. There it is. It needs delta seconds, which is a float input. So delta seconds here, delta seconds of type float. Here it is. That's the input. And then it needs time remaining, which is what we just made, time remaining, minus delta seconds, get delta seconds, this is it right here, and then we want to subtract those, okay? And then what I want to do is update time remaining, so kind of a setter for time remaining, put that in there, and that's the first part. So this basically updates the time remaining. What we want to do, of course, is send this to the HUD. So I want to get the HUD, again, control drag, again, 2 steps, and then get game mode UI again. And then from the game mode UI, we want to get time text. There's our time text. And from there, we want to set text. Oops, set text. There we go. Set text. Put this over there. Put this over there. Connect it up. All right. And move it a little bit closer. And then from there, we want to take the time remaining and connect it up to this. So I've done. So I'll kind of connect that up. It's going to give us this extra node. And I'm just going to make it so that it looks nicer. You don't have to do that. That wasn't in the PowerPoint, but I like to do this because it makes it look nice. There we go. So that is your update game timer function. All right. Next, let's hook it up. So again, we're going to go back to, there's a lot of stuff up here. Let's kill some of these. Sometimes that also is a factor. You know, I have all these functions up here, and I don't want all these functions. I just want the event graph and some of this stuff. So here's my event graph. So again, in here, this is where this is going to go. It's going to go to so when I'm in progress, I want to call the update game timer. So update game timer when I'm in progress. There it is, right? And I need to get a reference to the delta seconds, which comes from here. So drag that in. Now I'm dragging, but this is in the event graph. I could create another function to do all this, you know, as an example, and then call event tick for this function. For now, I'm just going to leave it like this. Okay, next. So let's see if this works. Compile and save. It should count down once I'm done, once I'm in progress only. So here I'm good, 5. And then you see now it's counting down, and 28, and it's going to keep counting down as an example. Now this is kind of an ugly thing. What if you wanted only to count down 2 digits, not 3, you know, kind of thing. It's not a part of this PowerPoint, but what if you wanted to do that? Well, what do we do? So back to update game timer. This text right here gives us all this detail right here. Take a look. It says the minimum integral digits, right? So minimum, you know, for the entire thing, you know, that the time remaining itself, right? So that's in seconds, right? So I definitely need like 4, right? I want to have 4 minimum digits, like, you know, 30, 30 plus the stuff that I want, right? Maximum integral digits, 4, right? You know, maximum digits. All right, maximum fractional digits, 2. Minimum fractional digits, 2, right? Let's see if that works and how this looks. Is it right? Compile and save, right? And let's see what happens now with the timer. Did I do it right or not, right? Well, I got 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. And then when I'm running, oh man, look at this. It gave me 4 of these and 2 of these. Not exactly what I was looking for. All right, so back to the code. So this should be 2 as well. So 2 digits before the decimal point. That's what this is. And 2 digits after the decimal point. I'm making all these the same because I want those, it's going to show the same thing over and over again. Let's try this again. I'll do that from here. So again, running it, and I wait for my timer to go, and now it should show me a much better count that's more accurate, kind of closer to what we're used to. And it's going to give me this even when I go down to single digits, as an example. It's not going to show me just 1. It's going to go 0, 1, right? Because that's what the default is. It'll pad with zeros the number of digits that I want. Now, I didn't tell you that in the PowerPoint, but you could see something was wrong up there, right? So this is how you fix that. Compile and save. All right, so now that we've done the time remaining, let's put this up on DevOps. Get that. Git commit -m. We'll say added time remaining, or we'll say implemented time remaining. Okay, very good, very good. We're now on slide 66. Okay, so now we're making a new function called add a time. Reminds me of Back to the Future. Add a time. Out of time. There we go. Out of time does not require anything, but does require the session state variable to set. So I'm going to set the session state variable to out of time. That's the next state, right? And then from there, what I want to do is disable player input. There's this one, because now we're out of time, right? And I want to get the HUD. So get a reference to the HUD. And then get game mode UI. And then from here, I want to get time text. And I want to set text. And the text that I'm going to set is 0, 0. And I do this because the countdown timer will keep counting down, and it'll give us some cockamamie number. So I don't want that. So it's going to be just 0, 0, 0, 0. That's what the time text is going to be. All right, at the end. So that's when you're out of time. Compile and save. All right. Next, what we want to also do is we want to update the game timer function again. So update game timer. So here it is. We're counting, we're subtracting stuff. We do it, and then what we want to do is take a look at the time remaining, right? And when the time remaining is less than or equal to 0, we're going to branch. And here it is. We're going to branch, make it look nice, and we're going to say that we're out of time. So out of time goes down. All right, so that's what's going to happen. So out of time is going to reset that up. Okay, and then we're going to go to, we'll create a new function named time remaining format. So we're going to go to here, time remaining format. That's what it's told me to do, a little function for that. Time remaining format is basically going to have a return node. We're going to get to that in a second. But what we want is to calculate how much time is left in minutes, right? So I want to get the time remaining. Here it is, right? And I want to divide it by 60. So this basically says if I have a time in seconds or minutes, I want to divide this by 60, right? Because what if I put in 5 seconds or whatever, or 5 minutes? I want to be able to do that as well. And then what I want to do is I want to go to floor to integer 64. That's the first part, right, of this. And what I want to do is I want to take this and I want to come down here and I want to multiply it by, this is what I did in the PowerPoint. I could have made this differently. I want to multiply it by 60. So this is going to divide this, and I'm going to multiply it by 60. This is going to give me up here, this is going to give me time in number of minutes. So this is going to be get number of minutes. That's what this is going to be up here, right? And I'm going to divide by 60 to get the number of how many 6 seconds have gone by. That's going to give me a number of minutes. And then how do I get seconds? Well, I'm going to take that number, multiply it by 60, and then I'm going to get the time remaining. So there's the time remaining again, and I'm going to subtract that. So subtract whatever the time remaining is from this part. Now you want to make this look nice, so we can put in a couple of reroute nodes, which is what I did in the PowerPoint. Again, there's a bunch of ways I could have written this. I could have written it with different lines, like I said, like a sequence nodes, but I decided this time to do it this way. Get number of seconds. There, that's what that is. So that's what these are. So this is this, but we haven't done anything with them. So what we can do is there is a new node called format text. So if I do something like get format text, right, or format text, it's the bottom. It's a new node, and this node is special. And the reason why is whatever you put in here, it generates arguments. Notice that there's arguments up here on the right hand side. So the way this works is if you put in curly braces, and then inside the curly braces, I put in minutes. The first thing I put in curly braces becomes an argument, colon, and then if I put in seconds, this is what it's going to look like. So this is kind of like a format, like what we do in C++ or C# or whatever, right? It's a string formatter, right? And it gives us two inputs. These are like interpolated values that we can put inside the object, right? So I'm gonna move this over here. What I want to do is I want to take the uh, time in minutes and drag it over. This is going to convert it. I need to convert this to text. I can't just do this, right? So let's go back, undo. I need to convert it to text. So I'm going to say to text. There it is. And then from the to text, from the value, this goes inside minutes like this. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to take this and then go to text. That's this one. And then I'm going to take this and this is actually wrong. Let's try this again. Sorry. To text integer 64 is what it should be. And to text float, I should keep those values. And then once I've got those two texts, then what we're going to see is I've got an integer for minutes and I've got a floating point number for seconds because I need to. Minutes are solid minutes, right? And I want to be able to keep, the number of microseconds in there as well. All right, so that's what it is, or milliseconds. And then from there, once I have that, I want a return node. So add return node, there it is. And my return node, if I just drag this up here, then I get a return result. This is called result. Let's just call this formatted time, which is what I said in the PowerPoint. All right, so that is what we did. It's a little bit tricky, and that's why I'm showing you how to do it. So that way people get stuck on this one too. Like I didn't know how you get those values. All right, and that is the time remaining format. That's what that is, compile save. Awesome, so now that we got the time remaining format, I can go back to update game timer. Update game timer is looking rather messy. And so what I've done is I've split it off now. So here's what I can do. I can take a sequence node, and the sequence node are going to be 3 lines of code, where it is, right? The first line of code is going to be all of this part, this set part. So I'm disconnecting this for now, all right? And this is where I kind of did this little thing on my own, where I kind of decided how many minutes and all that stuff I had. But this is okay for now. But what about if I had minutes instead of just like seconds? This would fail, right? So that's why we needed that conversion function. Okay. So here's my set text. I'm going to get rid of this set text because I don't need it anymore because this part is compute time remaining. So this is where we make changes to the original code, right? And just add a reroute node up there. And we'll put this up here. And this part is the next part that I kind of make. Time remaining format is when I want to sub in there. So I want to say time remaining format, right? So I look at the remaining format time, and this is where I want to connect this right here to that. So this is the next part that I want. And this is the next next piece, if you will, to the puzzle. See if I can make this work a little better so it actually connects properly. There we go. And put a reroute node because I want control, right? And maybe add these in a little bit nicer. There we are. I don't need this part now because that's going to be in the next line. So I'm going to kind of cut these out and put them down here. Oops. Cut them out and put them down here for now. And now I'm going to take all of these lines of code and comment them. And it's going to say something like update time remaining on UI. Go. Okay. And then this is the next one. And this part here is basically going to say, you know, if time has elapsed, then the player is out of time. Go. Add a rewrite node, make it look nice, pull it down, pull it across. And sometimes what I do, my friends, is I kind of just collapse these things so the comments aren't like so massive. I don't like it. Right, that's just up to you. I'm a little stickler for that. Sometimes I also make the comments the same length, just so that way I can look at them as like 3 different lines, right? You know, that kind of stuff. And that is your new update game timer function. And let's try it out, see what happens. So again, 5, 1, and then we get to that problem, right? So even though we fixed it in one sense, we didn't fix it here. I want to fix this problem. I showed you how to fix this. It's got 0, 21. Let's see what happens when it gets down to, first of all, it's 0, 15, you know, this. That's what it shows me. So how do I fix this now that I've added that new format? How do I do that? Because that's what I want. I want 0, 3 instead of this weird timer here. Well, we just kind of did that, right? But in my time remaining format, I have these two things again, right? So there we are. So, okay, so in the digits, how many digits do I want? Minimum number of digits is 2. Maximum is 2. That's what this is. So that's kind of what I did. They're just split up now, that's all. This is the one part. And the other part is here, and it says like, you know, the minimum is 2 and the maximum is 2. And we can put 2 and 2 there. There is no 2 and 2 here, but just in case, I'm putting this here. This is the same thing I kind of did this last time, but here specifically for minutes and seconds this time. And if I press play, you're going to see that it should be a little better like this. Now we have minutes and seconds, not just seconds, and that's why we have that format timer function, and it looks pretty good. Okay. All right, that's good. So that is the next piece, which is the keeping track of the session state and the time remaining format. All right, so we keep going. I want to provide player feedback now, right? So the way to do this is to modify the event begin play. So back to event graph. Here's my event begin play. What I want to do is I want to set the announcement on start. So to do this, I need a bit of a delay because I'm doing it here on event begin play. And then after a 0.2 second delay, what I want to do is get reference to the HUD. So again, here's the HUD reference. And then from the HUD reference, get game mode UI. And then from the game mode UI, I want to get that announcement. Get announcement. There it is. And then from the announcement, I want to set text. Set text. There it is. And so I'm going to connect these to this, right? And I want to make another pin. So this connects to here, another reroute node to here. And then let's straighten all these out. Q, these closer. Okay. And then in here, make an announcement that says something like, clear the zone, right? Which is what we kind of said before. And it's getting a little tight here, so I'm going to move all this down and move this across C. So it's going to be something like set announcements for player start. That's what this is going to be. So that's the announcements. Okay. And again, we compile and test. And it should just say clear the zone. Right? Clear the zone. And then when it comes to this, it should change afterwards, right? So we can get rid of it. So that's the first part. Next, once we've done that part, what we want to do is in the start game function, we also want to give an announcement. Let's add another pin here now. This is why is a beautiful thing. I can get the HUD and the game mode UI because we need to access again. There it is, HUD and game mode UI. And then from there, I want to set announcement, or get announcement, sorry, get announcement. And I want to set text to nothing. So basically that clears the announcement text right there. So when we're starting the game, we're not going to see that annoying text anymore. That tells us, you know, clear the zone. So this is clear announcements text. That's what that does. Let's just make it like this. Compile and save and test. So now we can see that when we're done, oh, for a second there, it showed us our text, but then it's gone, right? So one way to do that, we know that that is the case. So our announcement, we can actually clear this here just because I don't want to see it. 3 also can clear now because we don't need to see anything there. As long as we know that they're there as placeholders. And I just cleared those so that way there's no delay because we have a bit of a delay. So now what it'll look like is this. Clear the zone, and then it's done. All right, so that's pretty good. All right, so that is, the clearing. Out of time is also going to need its own announcement text. So out of time. Now, look, I've got this same thing over and over again, and I can go back to the event graph. So if I go back to the event graph, it's going to be this, right? I could make a function here if I was smart, like set announcement text or something like that. And then it would take whatever the text is on the outside, and then I wouldn't have to do this over and over again. These are repeated nodes. So I haven't done this in my code, but I mean, you could do it. But for now, all I know is out of time needs another line like that. So let's revamp out of time as well. So again, what I'm going to do is after we do this, I'm just going to move these around, add a sequence node. Here it is. Sequence node is going to have 3 lines of code. There it is. And so for the first line, it's going to do this, which is basically going to be disabled in the input. Again, this is just so that it's clear. So this is disable player inputs. Let's fix that so it says it right. We can do it up here too. And we're going to go here and we're going to go there. That's disabling the player input right there. And then the next part is reset the time remaining. That's what this does. So reset time remaining. And we'll add a little reroute node there too. And we'll do one of those. And we'll do one of these. Move things around a little bit. There we go. And then finally notify the player. Let's copy those nodes in from before. Those are the same nodes as we did up here, right? Instead of saying clear the zone this time, we're going to say out of time. All I was copy that from. I kept it in the clipboard. Out of time. So out of time is going to be here. That's going to notify the player that they've got no more time left. Okay, and this is going to be notify the player that they are out of time. There we go. That's what that is going to be. Let's make this a little nicer by moving things around. And move this node here too a little bit. There we go. Compile and save. Testing this out again. So again, we start off as clear the zone. And then when the time is over, as an example, then what we're going to see is this is going to, after 24 seconds, it's going to basically be, it's going to say out of time. And that's what we want to test. Now, I could have shortened the time and all that stuff to talk to you about it, but I mean, really, we're waiting 30 seconds. So bear with me, guys, while we do this. Also, a good chance to take a look at our timer to make sure it works properly, because I haven't looked at that yet. It looks like it's exactly what I want from a timer. So far we're doing very well. Out of time. There we go. All right, so that it kind of tells us everything we want. Compile and save. And now let's fix the time remaining when we start the game. So again, we'll do this in the event begin place. So again, event begin place, here it is. So we set the player start. That's the player start, and that's what this is. And then what we want is we initialize the time remaining text, right? So that way we can make sure it's good. So I want to get this, another delay. And we want to get the time remaining format, time remaining, here it is. And, sorry, time remaining format. function. I'll be okay. And then from that function, I want to get reference to the HUD and the game mode UI up here. We're running out of space again, means I'm going to have to pull this down again or pull the other one up. And then from there, I want to get time text, and I want to set text, and I want to set text to this. This is initially what it's going to start off at, just to make sure. I set it manually inside of the widget, but we want to make sure that it's set up properly here, and that's why we're doing this. So this is initialize time remaining text. That's what that does, just to make sure it's the right text that's being shown. And now up here, we want to add another line, oops, undo, which is going to kind of connect there. And we want to add another reroute node in there, like before. We want to grab, all of this and move it up just to make it a little nicer. Again, I keep doing this over and over again to show you it's better for you to do this, because this way you can, it's legible. It's human readable this way, as opposed to the way it was before. Okay, cool. Let's compile and save and test and see if it's still working the same way we want it to. So again, time remaining is correct now, right? And it starts off at this, and it's going to go do the regular thing. If I escape now, we're still good to go. There's nothing wrong. So this is a great place to put this up on DevOps. Git add dot, git commits -m. We'll say updated. Well, added player feedback. Added player feedback for various states. So far. Next, we want to work on the win condition. I know we're running into 9:42, my friends. I will take a break soon, I promise, but I want to kind of run through this to show you all the way I've done things and where I'm at. I'm at slide 74. I only have a few slides left, and then we'll take a short break, okay? So we'll go through this. Now, I've been talking the entire time, right? So I've been going from about 8 o'clock. It's about an hour and a half, that I've gone through. It's about a slide a minute, is what I'm getting through with talking, right? So, it's something around the same that it should be for you. So setting up the win condition is the next part. All right, so now let's create a new function named player1. That's the next one. So again, if I'm going to go back here, new function, we'll call this player1. How did the player win? Well, when the player wins, we want to take the session state. So we want to set the session state to player1. There it is. That's when it happens. We want to have 2 lines of sequence. So the first line is going to be that HUD stuff again. So again, this is where we could really have profited from setting stuff on the HUD game mode, right? Because we're doing this over and over. When you see me doing something over and over again, there might be a better way of doing it. And then get announcement. There it is, especially for this announcement stuff, right? And then set text, and then we're going to say something like you won, right? You win. Okay, that's the first line. So that's when it happens. We're going to kind of connect all this, and we're going to say let player know that they won. Okay, so that's what's going to happen. We're going to give them an update, and then from this, we're going to just move this up here. And the next one is we're going to disable player input again. So disable player input, here it is, because they're won. The game's over, right? So we're going to say disable player inputs, right? So again, there's lots of ways to do this. You might give an option for the player to play again in some games. Again, for our little game right now, that's all we need. So this is what we're going to have here, all right? And that is the player1 function. We also want to update the drone died function. So if I go to drone died, now here it is. Drone died, fine. All the drones, if all the drones are dead, so if I take the number of drones, right, and if it's less than or equal to, again, 0, So I've killed all the drones somehow, whether they collided with the player or not. If that's true, then we should say that the player won, right? The player won. Here it is. And we're going to give that little, kind of indicator that the player won. Here. Yep. So that is that part. But the problem is, what happens if, the player's dead, right? Then the player can't win if the player died. Like, let's say, for example, I destroy all the drones, but I do it with the cost of my life, right? So that doesn't make any sense. So how do we do that? As an example, we have to add in another little, pure function that we can use. And I talked about pure functions before, but we're going to call this is player alive. Here's is player alive. And what we're going to do is we're going to get the player pawn. So get player pawn. We're going to get a reference to it, and then cast to BP underscore FPS character. Here it is. And then from there, we're going to get attributes because players have attributes. That's from before, right? And then we're going to get health. Get health. And if it's greater than zero, if that's true, then we know that the player is alive. We know this is true. The player is alive if their health is greater than zero. We know that, right? And if that's true, we're going to add a return node, there it is, where we're going to return the result. So that's the return value. So that is when we know, that's what this little function is going to do. All it's going to do is check to see if the player is alive. And if the player is alive, we're going to return true, okay? But this is a pure function. So it means we have to check pure. Why? Because I don't want to pass in an execution node in this function when I just want to see, I want to use this for a condition, right? So compile and save. This is just a pure function, which is the player alive? Okay, next. I want to check this when the player won. So back to the player won. And we're going to say that the player cannot win if they're dead. So the only way that they can win is if they're still alive. So we're going to say, is the player alive? Notice that the pure function is green, not blue, right? And then I can branch. So that is my check to see that my player is still alive, and then I can still win. Okay, so that is the win condition. Right there, compile and save. All right, and then after I've done that function, what about if the player died? So player died is here. And if the player died, then we're going to set the session state again to player died, right? That's the next one. And we're going to have a sequence node where we're going to have a couple of lines of code, a few lines of code. And you can also delete them if you add too many, remove execution bin. There's that removal. And again, I want to have an announcement. Okay, so again, going back to the is player alive, and then if the player won, we have this announcement text. Let's just grab this announcement text stuff. Again, I'm dying to, have another function that's basically set announcement. But anyways, we're not doing that right now because it's not part of the PowerPoint. Okay, there it is. Here's this. And then something like you died instead of you won, right? So you died. Very Dark Souls-like. Okay, and then this is going to be something like inform the player they died. Okay, okay, so that's what happens first. And the other thing that happens is I want to reset the time remaining. So again, I want to get this and this, and I want to get time text, and I want to set text. Because what happens is if I'm done, it doesn't necessarily set the time to 0. So we're going to set this back to 0, 0, 0, 0 manually. Let's make these all line up. And this one, like this. And then I'm going to say reset time remaining. That's what that does right there. And like so, make it look nice. Pull this up. And the last thing is disable player input again. So disable player input, because whether you died or whether you won, we're going to disable player input. Disable player input. Maybe again, we would have a play again button or something like that that would pop up that will allow you to start again, like start over, like reset the level. We haven't done that. Okay, there we go. And that is your player died state. Okay. Now, what we want to do to make this work is we want to go back to the FPS player, right? That's way over here, BP underscore FPS character. And then when in the take damage function, in here, we see that we have all of this jumbled stuff. Let's add in another sequence node up here. So sequence. And the sequence node, let's add another reroute node in here so we can make this nice. And then in the sequence node is what happens if the player died. So we can get attributes, and we're going to say get health. And if the health is less than or equal to 0, less than or equal to, this is happening in the player as well, right? Then we're going to branch, right? As an example, here it is. And we want to set the is alive, like to false, right? Kind of thing. So, so then what we're going to do is let's get the game mode. So get game mode. We want to cast this to BP underscore FPS game mode. So if the game mode exists, that's what this does. First we get the game mode. Then what we want to do is we want to call the player died function. So there's two ways the player can die, right? Well, sorry. The player died function is going to be triggered when the health is less than 0. But also, it's the player 1 is going to check to see if the player's still alive. That's what it's doing, right? So this right here, if player reaches 0, then they're dead, right? That's what this is. So if player health reaches 0, then they have died. That's what this is. Let's change this to black. And then let's move this on to here. Okay, very good. Compile and save. That is the take damage function. Now let's try it out. By the way, I'm at the end. So this is all the stuff that we did for last day. With explanations, it took me about an hour and a half, an hour and 40 minutes probably. And now let's test it. And let's see if there's any errors. So again, I'm playing, and let's see if I can, kind of shoot them. I can reduce the drones. Let's win first. So winning should be no problem, right? And I gotta get close. The rifle doesn't have a lot of range. I'm shooting from the hip, right? Let's get some ammo and make sure I have enough. And let's see if I can do this in 10 seconds. I may not, right? Because I'm not very quick. I don't have a speed boost of any kind. All right, and I have one drone left, and I'm not going to make it. I'm out of time. So this is a thing. Maybe I have to take a different route, right, than this. So that's definitely something that the way I've set it up. So out of time actually works nicely, but we want to be able to test everything out, not just everything. Let's just see if I can die. So boom. I got to chase these guys to kill me, right? All right, boom. And then I think there's another one over here somewhere, not knowing the game. Yeah, there is. Here it is. Can I die on time? I don't know if I can die on time even. Right? So here we are. Okay. Here we are. Boom. And there's one over here. Let's see if I can do this before. I don't think I can even die on time. I want to make myself die. Yeah. It's so far away. And I'm not moving very quickly. So it's hard for me to test. Right? Let's see if this guy gets close enough and whether he'll try and kill me or not. So again, I'm out of time twice, just for the purposes of my test, because again, you want to test to see all these conditions are working. It's the way we set up the level, right? I mean, that's the bottom line. So here's my character right here. Yeah. And they're very far away, these drones, right? So I'm just testing to see where everything is. Here they are. Let's put, there's 3 drones here in sequence. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move, um, maybe I'll put another set of drones, another drone and another set of points here. So maybe just do one of these, or maybe just move all these. How about that? Move the drone and the patrol points. So kind of grab that, 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 and that. I've highlighted all of them, and let's move them closer so that way I can die easier and maybe also destroy the drones. Again, you need to test your game. Like, one thing that I've also seen, guys, I have to also say is sometimes for whatever reason, um, you guys don't demonstrate everything. I need you to demonstrate stuff like in your video. So if you have to do what I'm doing here, that's important, right? Because how can you prove that everything is working? Um, that all your states are working. You have to prove that, right? So as opposed to um, there we go, all those points. Let's move them closer. So I know my route now. I'm gonna kind of do one of these. So I'm gonna kind of go here, go here, go here, and then die. Let's see. A little bit closer, compared to what it was before. Okay, so I can die now. I can go here. Again, I'm not moving very quickly. So I know this is the first drone I gotta get way over here. And then go over here and grab this drone next. 17 seconds. I can also extend my time. That's also something what people did. They extended the time, and then I think I'm still not going to make it, just the way it worked. Um, and then right here, I'll extend my time. I think I'm going to do that next. So I got 3 seconds left, and I don't think I'm going to die on time. No. Well, let's try this again. So the way to work this out would be in the game mode, right? So we have like time remaining. That's this. And we have 30 seconds. Let's make it so it's less crazy. We'll make it so it's like, I don't know, 300 seconds. All right, there you go. A little bit easier to do. Let's try this out one more time. I know I'm wasting time, but we need to test this, and there's no other way to do it. Okay, let's also get closer. Let's see if we can get these drones. They move away from me. Also, the drone patterns, like the drone patterns I've created, are also a factor, right? Because however I've made these drones patrol, I mean, I can make it so they're going to smash into me sooner, right, than later, right? So I'm going to get, again, all I want to see if I can get drone death, or sorry, player death right now. All right, so again, we have lots of time. You can also say we're also testing the timer because it looks like 4 minutes and 30 seconds as opposed to just 30 seconds, right? So that's a pretty good thing to test. So minutes work, not just seconds. And let's see, there should be my drones around here. Where did it go? I got 2 drones left. Are they stuck? I probably made the drone stuck. I did. See what happened was I kind of put them in a place, and they're both stuck. Okay, that's so because I moved them around the way I did. All right, at least now we know that drone death works. What did I do? I'm so silly. Yeah, I put um, I put this one right here, this patrol point inside the building. That's what I did, right? So that's not good. Did I do that too for here? Sorry. Okay, patrol point 9, 10. That's okay. Patrol point 11. That's all right. 12. That's okay. 13. That's all right. 14. Good. 15. That's that one. 16. That's that one. 17. That's that one. 18. 19. Of course, the last patrol point, I bet you. 20. This one. Can't be in here, right? All right. There we go. So hopefully that's a little better. Now the next one is let's killing the drones. Let's try that. So I got to test all this out. I'm almost done. Come on. Let's test this out. So again, killing the drones. This might be easier now because they're right next to me. Okay, unless they go through a wall. And if I'm a better player at this game, good. That's 3. I got 2 left. Let's see if I can kill this one. And we got 1 more. There we go. So win condition works. So win, death, out of time, all those conditions are good. And you know, these all are good, and we're good to go to the next level. So file, save all, and what we can say, notice that I did that, is in here I can say something like git at dot git commit minus m, and we'll say completed win condition. And that was your homework for last week. Questions around this, guys? Like, what was the thing that stopped you from getting this done? Some of you, again, like I said, weren't able to get it done at all, right? Are you guys all good? I know I went through an extent, like a, kind of this whole thing and long form, but I wanted you guys to see how I did everything. And this way, you should be pretty good in terms of how this all works. All right. So what I'm going to do now is it's 10 o'clock. Let's stop recording this right now, take a 5-minute break, and when we come back, we'll do the next piece. Okay? Let's do that now. I'll stop recording.